You know what's sad? By election day, probably half these candidates will be sacked over a Facebook post from 2007. Hey, I'm Josh Butler from 10 Daily. Let's find out what our politicians have been up to this week on the campaign trail. This is Below the Line. Hooray, it's week 3. We're halfway, it's our hump episode. And speaking of humping, how's that Steve Dixon? Fantastic, great move. Well done, Josh. Thanks, Josh. Anyway, so it turns out if you're in One Nation, you can pretty much do whatever and say whatever you want. But a fella goes to a strip club just one time, you're out of here. But please, let us all remember who the real victim here is.
I've had Fraser Anning, I've had Brian Burston, I've had a whole list of them. Where are they now?
She's right, and it's not fair. The person picking these candidates sure has a lot to answer for.
I'm the leader of this party, and I'll make the final decisions, as I always have done.
So Dixon dropped out, but we've also had other controversy with, let's list them, shall we? We have One Nation's Ross McDonald for some lewd and weird as Facebook posts, Labor candidates Wayne Kernoth for anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, Luke Creasy for sexist jokes, Liberal candidates Peter Killen for homophobic comments,
Jeremy Hearn and Jessica Whelan for anti-Islam comments, and Andrew Hastie is refusing to answer questions about meeting with a far-right extremist.
Have you ever met Neil Erickson?
Look, I don't answer defamatory questions.
as well as Liberal candidate Craig Kelly denying he punched a dinosaur. This week we had our first leadership debate, but it looked more like they were on the set of some weird political dating show.
If you were in charge of everything, what would you make the national pastime?
With Bill Shorten winning over the audience, he maintained his lead as the frontrunner, but while his body was exercising, his mind was on the cheap meals.
If you had a friend who was perhaps on the large side, the chubby side, and they had 10 Big Macs a day...
Speaking of Clive Palmer, for weeks there's been talk of Clive Palmer not paying $7 million in overdue wages to his former employees, while at the same time he's shelling out tens of millions of dollars on those ads and billboards. So this week, he tried to clear a few things up.
I've got $4,000 million. Do you think I'm going to worry about anybody else?
Do we want to talk about the preference deals? Oh, let's just cut to scum and play with balls again, shall we?
Dynamic. Anyway, the latest news poll shows the race is tightening, so things are really going to heat up in the next few weeks as the scare campaigns go full Wilhelm scream. That's all from us. See you next week. Fantastic video. Great move. Well done, Josh.